Hello, today I'm going to be giving you a few tips and pieces of advice about how to make your writing style very clear and concise when it comes to A-level writing, but this can also be accessed by GCSE students as well. Now, what I have in front of you is some examples that I've taken from some of my students' essays. Sorry for those of you involved in that. And I'm just going to be talking about how we can make some of the writing a little bit more fluid and clearer. So the first tip then that I'm going to give you is just about always keeping it simple. Now, where some students can go wrong, particularly for A-level, is feeling like they need to show off some dense vocabulary, and almost by doing that, it can mean that meaning is lost because it's becoming very wordy, very dense, rather than actually just letting your ideas do the talking for you. And I think that was the best advice that I was given, even at university. And I just want to say as well that writing is something that is a continuous form of improvement. I'm still working on my writing style now, and I will continue to do so. So it's just something that we've got to keep practicing in order to make perfect. So these essay parts are taken from the unseen extract that we looked at with The Tempest, which there is also a video linked to talk about that as well. But in front of you here, I've got an example of an introduction and a first paragraph. So when you have when you're writing your introduction, it is so important that your argument is really clear and that you're giving background about some of the key terms that you're talking about and what's going on as well. So I'm just going to read you through and talk you through some of my purple highlighted areas. So Shakespeare demonstrates the elements of political protest and their significance through Prospero and Caliban. Okay, clear, straightforward, I'm understanding what's going on. Caliban is deployed as a vehicle to illustrate how power dynamics change through a powerful hegemonic force. Now, I probably should have highlighted that as well because that is an incorrect use of a comma. That needs to be an and. So don't randomly use commas. Prospero, former Duke of Milan, is ravenous for power. I like that use of the word there, ravenous. Even though this is an analytical essay, you can still have those moments of flair and show off your creativity as well, and will exploit and subjugate Caliban in order to receive this. Okay, so what I would firstly say about that, I'm not a fan of too many ands, so try and restrict those, and just be really careful about your word choices as well. In this instance, exploitation and subjugation are right, but in future, just make sure that they are definitely linked with what you're talking about, because sometimes students may write a verb choice such as, I don't know, a character is coerce, but actually not know what coerce means and just use it because it sounds better. And subjugate Caliban in order to receive this. Now, why I've highlighted this is because it's not perhaps clear what this is. And sometimes, and I'm going to come on to that in a minute, it's just about really making sure that your reader of your essay is 100% sort of understanding at all times what you're trying to say. So just clarify those moments. So what is this? I know you're talking about power, but power in what sense? Throughout the extract, there is a change in power. What change in power? As there was an attempt to rebel, but this was defeated by the elite class. So what I would say there is it's really important that you write any English essay in the present tense. So there is an attempt, because these extracts are still being analysed and interpreted today, so they're very much alive. So always in the present tense. As an attempt to rebel, needing a comma there. So whenever you're going to have a connective, make sure you've got a comma before it. But this was defeated, so same again with the past tense here, by the elite class. Now, I'm once again thinking about, well, who's the elite class? What do you mean by that? As a result, Caliban is forced to succumb into a marginalised other. Now, I highlighted that just because for the essay that we were talking about, it didn't quite make sense. Forced to succumb into a marginalised other. I think what would needed to have been said by that is forced to succumb to Prospero's dominant power, which, yeah, something along those lines. But I like this. Shakespeare adds further conflict by presenting the vexed relationship. That's a really good use of that word there. I like that. With the colonised and the coloniser. So introducing some critical theory, which I'm sure later in the essay the student goes on to discuss in more detail. Now, I'm a massive advocate for topic sentences and making these really clear, not too long, and just making sure your argument is being supported well through those. So let's see how this is done. Firstly, the writer portrays to the audience two characters who desire to possess the power in dialogue. Now, I kind of get what's being said here, but it could be made clearer about, so two characters who desire to possess, well, once again, what sort of power? Give me more precise details about what it is that they genuinely want. And in dialogue, we were dealing with a play, so within what moment of the lines and in the scene as well. So a little bit more clarification. So I'm going to leave that one there. So I think in sum for that one, it's about making sure we've got good use of commas and writing always in the present tense. And if you're referring to more general ideas, make sure you're making them specific, just like I spoke about with this. Who's the elite class? What sort of power is it? The second thing I wanted to go on to discussing today is about dense sentences. So I'm just going to read one student's sentence for you. The connotation of the raven links with death, creating a sense of foreboding imagery, and how Caliban is instantly portraying his position on the island and how he wants to prevent any invasion through the strong and powerful language. So in order to break that down, the first thing that I'm going to be saying is that this here highlighted is what we call a comma splice, and it means that the comma has been used incorrectly and leads to a sense of jarring in the sentence. Now, the advice I was always given at university level as well, and I used to do this, I'd use comma splice and then I'd always use the verb in the present participle through, so what I mean by that is through ing, and I was told just to avoid using that. When you're talking about verbs, try to avoid them in that form and just use it in the past tense or the present tense, whatever is accurate for your sentence. Because as we can see here, it becomes quite clunky because instantly portraying, creating, and foreboding, it just needs to be a little bit tighter. In addition, I can see two lots of ands. I can totally understand it if it's for some sort of power and emphasis, but I don't think it works very well here. It just makes it too extensive. So one of my suggestions is to just break it up. So you can see here I've got two sentences out of this one. So Shakespeare's reference to the raven has an undeniable link with death. Therefore, and whenever you are mentioning sort of a linking word, make sure you've got the comma after it, or like suddenly, for example. So therefore, the symbol could emphasise, notice I'm being tentative with the language. I'm not saying this is 100% what Shakespeare's saying. It's one reading, it's one interpretation. Therefore, the symbol could emphasise Caliban's attempts to intimidate Prospero and to forebode Prospero's inevitable doom if he does not leave his private space. So the reason why I underlined this is because I could have written and to forebode his inevitable doom, but then it wouldn't have been clear if I was talking about Caliban or Prospero, which kind of links with what I was discussing with example 1, which is why it is important, even though I've mentioned Prospero's name here, to make it really clear again that I'm actually talking about Prospero rather than Caliban. You'll notice as well that I haven't used any present participles, just to make it that bit clearer as well. Okay. My second example is this one. This shows that in Caliban, opening the extract, it portrays rebellion, and it links to my argument because whilst there is an attempt to rebel, it is overcome by the hegemony forces of Prospero and his magical powers, because later on, towards the end of the extract, Caliban has very limited lines and has much less than Prospero. So once again, to read this aloud is a really effective way of just checking that your writing is clear and concise, because obviously for me to read that aloud, it is a little bit clunky. So same again about a mentioning of using the conjunction and. It doesn't necessarily need a comma before it. You might see that in some edited text, but for me, I guess, yeah, as a personal preference, I don't feel it's needed because it kind of, replaces that use of the comma. And it links to my argument. Okay, now, one thing that is really important about English as an academic subject is that because we're talking about our opinion, it's sort of understood that the whole essay is therefore in that first person perspective. So therefore we don't need to emphasize I, me, my. Now this isn't the same for all disciplines, particularly not in social sciences, but for English it definitely is important we depersonalize it. I don't mind seeing one, perhaps in, I don't know, an introduction or a conclusion, but really don't get into the habit of using too many possessive pronouns. Okay, so once again, I've got the use of a comma splice here. Again, this just needs to be broken up and it can be really easily done so. So this is my offering. So in the exposition, so I've put my comma there because I'm talking about a specific moment. Caliban is presented as the dominant figure in this exchange with Prospero. Stop. Caliban sparks the conflict and dominates the dialogue to begin with. It is clear at this moment in the extract, Caliban has the authority and uses language as his weapon to protest against the hegemonic force that is Prospero. Now, another thing to say as well, if you're going to be talking about hegemony, which is about ruling class ideology, if you're talking about it as a force, it's hegemonic. Okay, so that was just one way that I think that could be developed a little bit further. So I've been talking about commas and comma splicing quite a lot today, and I'm just going to highlight it again here. So Caliban is seen as the other. That's just not necessary, just put Caliban is seen as the other because he has been marginalised out of society and exiled onto an island where he must become a slave. Once again, that's a comma splice, so just get rid and start a new sentence. We see another one here, so just be making sure that if you're feeling like you're using too many commas, just to reflect upon it and think, is this actually necessary, or do I just start a new sentence now? So I've put another offering of Caliban is presented as the other in this extract because he has been exiled from his own private space. In his attempts to protest against this, Caliban threatens physical pain upon Prospero by calling upon ravens and blisters, all o'er Prospero. So what I've just done here is I've adapted this quotation from and just extended it a little bit. And what you can do if you have a quotation that is quite extensive and you don't want to use all of it, is you can use ellipsis just to show the bits that you're taking out. In addition, what you could do is if it said, I don't know, how dare you do this, what you could then write is how dare you, and then in your square brackets, Prospero, do this. Just so once again you're being really clear about who that you is and who is being spoken to. Obviously Shakespeare did not write that, so please don't quote that. But yeah, so it just comes back to this idea here about being really precise and particular. So that's everything from me. So as I said right at the beginning, writing is all about practice. I'm still practicing now, and it's my best advice I would give you is to make sure when you've written your essay to read it aloud and read it slowly and carefully, and always think, is it really necessary for me to have this comma here, or am I comma splicing, and how can I make my writing more precise, clearer, rather than it being too wordy and a little bit messy. Some advice I was also given is it's best to consider that the reader of your essay is almost like an older member of our society, and there really needs to be given a care handling throughout your essay about what it is you're trying to say, how is it linking to the question, and how is it going to link to your text choice.